Hey everybody, welcome to One Beer With. This is Dan Murphy here at Duke's Bohemian out on Allen Street. It's the Grove Bar here at Duke's Bohemian Grove Bar with Chris Fritton. This is my series where I basically sit down and have a beer with somebody I find to be particularly interesting. And honestly, this time with Chris Fritton, poet, member of the very kind of tight-knit Buffalo, New York literary circle. When I came up with this idea for a show, I wanted to sit down with people I thought were interesting, and you were one of the first people that came to mind. It's true. It's because we spent a lot of time, we talked, and we've had interesting conversation. Now,
and we've had a lot of beers.
We have had a lot of beers. Currently, you're a studio director at the Western New York Book Art Center.
Yes.
Let me know how you got into that position and exactly what that entails.
It was something that started in 2008. My friend Richard Kegler started it, and he bankrolled the building. And his idea was always to have a place where you could bring printers and bookmakers and other artists together, and you would have a place where you could share equipment, and you could also share skills, and just like a headquarters, so you can imagine. And he bankrolled the building, and we began to move in equipment in. He and I worked for a long time as volunteers, and then ended up sort of self-creating these positions within the institution. And it's become, in so many ways, what he envisioned. That would be a place where we do primarily letterpress printing. We do a lot of bookmaking and bookbinding, but it is a community center for people to come in and actually share that equipment and, again, share the creative work that we're doing. So,
now, what's really cool about that is it's bookmaking. It's in terms of analog, in terms of being able to typeset and do the printing and screen printing on that. Who do you find the need for that? Is that more of a smaller audience now? Is it kind of a smaller niche now than it would have been in the past? Or do you get a lot of students who do you get coming in learning to make how to print book?
I think that the niche has actually expanded quite a bit.
Really?
With this increase in digital technology, there's also been the reactionaryism, where you would come back and you'd say, I want something that's more handmade or more analog. So in the 6 or 7 years that the space has been around and been open, we found this reinvestment in analog technologies. We found sort of like a new, I think, appreciation for the haptic and the handmade. And these people come back, and the way that the model is set up, you can take a series of workshops and you can learn how to do printmaking, how to do letterpress printing or screen printing. But then once you understand how to do those things, you can come in and pay for studio time and then work on it on your own.
So completely do it yourself.
Exactly. So it's like if you wanted to come in and make book covers or something, but you don't know how, it's like you can show up and you can just make whatever you want and you pay a small fee.
And what do you have to do if you come in there and you want to make a book cover? I mean, you come in there, it's like, I have an idea and a photograph. How do I make this book cover?
And I think that, the misconception a lot of times is that you're going to be able to produce exactly what you'd be able to imagine, or what you might be able to imagine doing, any other way where I would just be like, this is what I'm going to get.
Right.
What I think is really amazing about analog design, letterpress, all these other things, is just this notion that you kind of have to work with what's there. You're working with movable type, so you only get certain typefaces that you want. You're working with, certain images that are on images, what we call cuts, blocks, things like that. And a lot of times you really have to be flexible. You have to look at that and say, well, this is close to what I was thinking.
Okay.
And then you have to, and I think this is hard for digital designers that come down a lot because they're so used to getting exactly what they want and being able to tweak it. And often, I say that the first thing is like, let go. Let go of all your expectations of exactly what you're going to get and be a lot more flexible. So if you came down and you wanted to design a book cover, you'd say, well, I want this image of trees, and I want this particular typeface. The first thing I would say to you is, we have a typeface close to that, and I have this cut of some trees. And it's like, and if that's close to what you want, it works out. And if it isn't, you really have to switch on the fly, which we find all the time in analog design. And then you have to just decide on something.
So, okay, going with what I said before, if somebody actually has a physical photo and says trees are good, but these are the specific trees I want. what are you able to do, if anything, to kind of replicate that?
At the Book Art Center, we can't, but I think it's really cool that you can still have this correspondence between the digital and the analog, where you can get blocks made from digital files. So if you were to design something for me digitally, say a logo of a company or an image block like that that's had a photograph, you would half-tone it so that it can be turned into a block for printing. And there's companies that still do this through a photo etching process. And when you have that block made, it's exactly the right height for letterpress printing, and then you move from digital to analog. You take that thing that you had, you imagine digitally that you had designed, and we get a block for it, we drop it on the press, and when you print it, you get almost exact sort of convergence with what you were thinking digitally.
And letterpress printing is essentially a grid almost. You put the block pieces down on.
Right.
And then dip them basically in ink and press down.
The easiest way to explain it is all letterpress printing is relief printing. I'm taking individual blocks, whether they're made of wood or metal. I'm aligning all those things into a form. I take those, I ink them up, and then you carry a sheet of paper over top of them. That's what the press helps you do. And then from there you make a single print. You do one color at a time, using one form at a time. So every piece I would make...
CY, MK, the cyan, magenta, yellow, black, or what are the colors you do?
What's really interesting is that when you're working with those individual colors, we can use anything we want. So often it's just one color, say black, and then red, and then blue. But there were blocks in the history of printing that were CMYK that were still letterpress. So that CMYK system that we understand from newspapers and magazines and everything now that gives us a full colored print, there were blocks made for letterpresses that would be run in those 4 colors to give you a full color print. So we have some of those at the shop. We don't often do those or sort of remake those now, but we do have some as sort of like historical examples. And what we work with now mostly are these really great sort of vintage and stuff like that.
Now, the other thing you did that I'm so in awe of that you've done is the Buffalo Small Press Book Fair. And now I've known you for almost 20 years, back now. And you came up with this, you said 8 years ago was the first time. Small Press Book Fair, you're a Carpella's manuscript librarian here in Buffalo. And you bring in all of these different writers, from zines to independent press to anything basically, who come into this one spot and sell their wares. How did that come about, and how did you get involved and make it exist?
What's super funny is it started out as like a really selfish endeavor. I was doing these book fairs and other things in different cities all around the U.S. So I'd go to New York, I'd go to Toronto, and all these places, and I was selling my own work. So I was making small artist books.
Which was poetry?
Mostly poetry, small chapbooks and things like that. And they would have a handmade element. They'd be hand-bound or something, and I would take those to the fairs and I would sell them. And I came back to Buffalo in 2006 from the University of Maine, and when I got here, I was just like, you know what? There's no reason why we couldn't do a small press book fair right here in Buffalo. There's plenty of people that are doing literary work. There's plenty of people that are doing poetry and other things. And I know that there's plenty of people that are producing creative work that would also fit within that sort of realm, And I just tested the waters. But, what was really at the heart of it was having a venue to sell my own work. So I was kind of like, you know what?
There's got to be,
I do this in New York and I do this in Toronto, but it's like I could also do this at home. But when I thought about it, I was just like, I could also provide the opportunity for tons of other people to do it. And I tested the waters. I said, hey guys, to a few people that I knew, if I did this, would you be interested? In the very first year, in 2007, I had 65 vendors, and we probably had, 800, 900 people come to the event.
Yeah.
Last year when I did it, 2014, so it would have been April of this year, I had to do it 2 days. It's been expanded to 2 days. I had 150 vendors and artists participate, and I had over 5,000 people.
5,000 people.
So it's become a regional event that involves the entire Great Lakes, the entire northeastern seaboard, and all the way out into the Midwest. People come from hours and hours away, and they spend the entire weekend here now. That event is expanded from a 1-day thing for 6 hours to a 4-day thing where there's events all Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And again, it really started because it was like, how do I sell my own books? Right. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's hundreds of people just like me. And I was like, and they need to sell their books too.
And I just make money from them.
Yeah. And it was like in that idea where I was, but it's a really great point that you bring up, where it was like, how do I facilitate this for everyone?
Absolutely, yeah.
But how do I keep it affordable? Because I know how hard it is to do those things. So what I want to do is, keep tables cheap. And when you come to town, I'm going to show you the great places to go and the cheap places to drink and the cheap places to stay. And somebody could come do that entire weekend in Buffalo for like $200.
Yeah.
And if you make your $200, then it's like you're eating and you go home, or so.
Which is really incredible that you think that there's not many cities at all where you can come in for $200 for 4 days and make it. You'd be like, all right, I got a nice hotel. I got food, I got drinks, and gas, and be able to
and have something to do every single night. And I think that for me, it's about building that community. It's about giving everyone their sort of opportunity too. I mean, I know that small press is like a niche. Small press is this niche in the way that a lot of times people don't even know what it is. It's like, do you mean small books?
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
it's a little tiny.
well, kind of, it's just like something put out in a limited edition, and it's like, but it's about giving those people that have put in the time, put in the work, their opportunity. So I try to keep it as inclusive as possible. And keeping it cheap is one way to keep it inclusive, and I understand that as part of like Buffalo's economy, the Great Lakes economy, and everywhere else. It's like if I make that table more than $30, people might not come. And if I make it $30 and they sell 10 books, they made money.
Absolutely.
And I feel good about that because they come out on top, and they also got the opportunity to share with someone like what they were doing. So the way that I always characterize it, and I think it's like funny and laughable, but I'm just like, that guy who wrote the sci-fi novel about Mars, he gets his 5 minutes too. I don't care if it's heady and it's academic, it's nothing elitist, and there's nothing exclusive about it. So the Small Press Book Fair I've always thought of is uncensored space. It's inclusive as opposed to exclusive. It's affordable, and all of those things make it completely different than a lot of the other places that you might go, like AWP and these bigger fairs around the U.S. And it's like it's $400 for a table.
Oh my God, really? See, what I love is going there just with a little bit of money and just walking through the tables with, I want this and this and that. And I'm going to buy 10 or 15 smaller things, but maybe I'll like 5 or 10 or 2.
Right.
But I would never have discovered that had it not been for this festival. So that's a very cool thing that I wrote about.
My favorite thing about giving everyone their opportunity like that is having, the opportunity to discover little treasures like that, And those treasures are a really important part of it, and they correspond to a lot of things being handmade or like requiring that level of investment. It's like, even if it's a little zine that you made, it's like you took the time and you did that thing, and now you get to share it.
It's literally 3 years later. I still pick them up.
Or you leave it on your coffee table, and you're just kind of like, somebody stops over, they pick it up and they look at it. It's a mutual as opposed to commercially produced things. You realize almost immediately that there's a level of visceral investment in it, where you're just kind of like, that person folded this up and stapled it themselves.
Now, I know we're starting to run out of time here, but real quick, and along with lines with the zines and everything else, this is my big question. That's all handcrafted. That's all print. That's all in this era now. With your work with the Book Art Center and with this, is there still a future for print in this digital era? And what is that future? And will it last? Or is it a kind of dinosaur that its last life?
I think the thing that I stress with everybody is that I never see the two as mutually exclusive. And I think that with the moment that you see them as mutually exclusive, like I produce something exclusively digitally because it's more efficient, or you become a Luddite and you say, I'm only going to produce things, in an analog way, and you begin to exclude audience. At the same time, you exclude opportunity. You exclude opportunity for yourself. And when you take the time to have those two things work together or work hand in hand, then all you do is open up a number of different opportunities. So right now, so much of the analog design I do can correspond to digital design or work hand in hand with it, whether it's letterpress or anything else. And what I see is the people that have analog components of what they're doing correspond to, say, a zine or something that they have online. They might have a blog, and then they actually make a little paper zine that goes along with it. Exactly. So they see those things working hand in hand as well. And when you do that, it opens up like whole new worlds. There's someone who might see the one and be led to the other, and there's someone who might see the digital one and be led back to the analog. If you begin to exclude those, that's the beginning of the end, I think, for both. But I think that it's about an openness and a porousness, like between the two, and as soon as you make that, then I think that it's the best way.
I don't know. I think I'm pretty alright, man. Just thank you very much for joining me for one beer with us.
Absolutely.
Cheers. Thank you.